Hey everyone, it's Karen. Okay, I have been on a medical kick recently, and this happens to me almost anytime I have a really good experience with a doctor. So I have been without a doctor essentially since last summer, I think, because first I had a doctor get fired, I'm pretty sure. I switched to a new doctor who I carefully chose and drove a really long way for, and she ended up quitting and moving to a different state. And then I again carefully selected a doctor that met my needs and my hopes and wishes for somebody that was patient-centered and really focused on prevention and treating the person as a whole. And it took until March, the end of March, to get in to see her. I'm just absolutely in love. She's the first doctor that's younger than me, which is weird, but she is just absolutely amazing. So anyway, it kind of made me go on this huge situation where I question all my life choices and wonder yet again if I would be interested in being in the medical field, or my new revelation, the thing that I'm epic at in teaching, is connections with people and basically connections to parents, de-escalating kids, building connections with kids so that they transform the way they see themselves. And it made me think, is medical social work something that would be an easy, well, not an easy, but a nice transition. Anyway, regardless, I found a book to read that also has to deal with medicine, and that is The Unseen Body by Dr. Jonathan Reisman. This book was so good, definite 5 stars. It combines basically everything I love, which is learning about the human body, which I just think is fascinating, and then nature, which I feel my most alive when I'm outside in nature, which I have to leave for nature pretty soon because I have to work today. Anyway, this doctor basically goes through the body, not necessarily system by system, because sometimes it's more he's talking about a gland or something else, but it's almost like a little bit of a memoir, a little bit of nature writing, and a little bit of teaching you about the human body. It's just absolutely fascinating. And so one of the things that kind of transformed my mind when he started is he talks about how being a doctor is essentially like being a plumber. And I never thought of it that way. He talks about various conditions and how they are basically like a clog of some sort in the body, or in the case of like some sort of a trauma, maybe like too much is coming out, right? Like blood loss and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And then it made me think about myself, and like really my only medical thing going on right now is diabetes. Well, diabetes, the reason I have that, which number one, well, let's talk about that later. The reason I have that is, or the cause of it is basically that my glucose in my bloodstream can't get into my cells to have them, you use it for energy. And so right there, that's like a clog. That's like a sticky lock that has to be fixed in some way. And anyway, one of the really cool things that is making me excited for spring break is just that I'm finally able to see change and see like how my choices are actually finally having an impact on like my morning blood sugar and just like my blood sugar throughout the day. And before, what I would do action wise, like drinking lots of water, going for walks, whatever, wouldn't make a difference. But besides that, that's on me. Let's talk about the book. Okay, so one of my pet peeves is that people who lose a lot of weight, which I'm in the process of doing, come back as fat shamers without realizing that just moments ago they were super fat, and oftentimes they swing back and are super fat again. But this section on fat was so interesting, and it talked about the balance between like fat shaming and like realizing the health implications of it. And obviously like some of the stuff, which is that basically like if you're fat, you're more likely to get all these diseases, your body just is not working as well, it's not flowing as well, all that sort of thing. But what I thought was really interesting, and I think at this moment I was not reading with a pen, so I didn't underline it, but it was talking about how doctors often view people who are fat, and how there have been studies showing that basically like you are viewed more negatively by your doctor if you are fat, and that they have kind of this bias against fat people as well. They view them as basically like not trying as hard or not following their directions as well. And so that was interesting that fat shaming is basically pervasive, and on the role of a doctor, it might be more internal. They might not really be like loud and proud about fat shaming because they're paid to be respectful to you. But anyway, I thought that was interesting. But the main thing I thought was really interesting is just how they were talking about all the ways that you get a physical exam by a doctor and how much more difficult it is if your body is large. Like, you can't hear the heart as well, and you can't like hear the breathing as well, and you can't like palpate things as well if they are basically under like this huge layer of fat. So I found that super interesting. But anyway, this whole book was just absolutely fascinating. So much information in here that I loved. And that leads me to the next thing, which I loved yesterday. This is all yesterday, the first day of spring break, which is that I started and finished a new Netflix show, which is called Emergency NYC. It is a docu-series, and it is connected to one of my favorite shows, which is Lenox Hill. Lenox Hill takes place in a hospital in New York City, and it follows various doctors around. It follows like a OBGYN, it follows an emergency room doctor. There are a few like neurology sorts of people, and anyway, it was just amazing, and I watched that in a single day. And so when I was already in this kind of medical mood, and then I turned on the TV looking for something on Netflix, and the first thing that popped up was this Emergency NYC. I'm like, yep, this is what I need in my life. And it was basically like a cousin or a sister show to Lenox Hill. So instead of focusing on the same hospital, Lenox Hill in New York City, they focused on emergency departments in a few different hospitals, but Lenox Hill was still part of that. And so a lot of the doctors that were on the first show were still on the second show, but it had more stories, more people they followed. They also followed nurses and more than basically just doctors. But oh my gosh, it is just such an engaging show because it's real doctors, real life, real people, and you see how human all these doctors are and how they can have health stuff of their own. In both shows it showed that, and I know that's obvious, but it was just like how touching to see how someone's personal experiences kind of impacts their reason for being a doctor, or makes them reevaluate along the way based on experiences they have. In both seasons, there were doctors who were very, very, very closely touched by a huge medical scare of their own or a medical problem of their own, and I just thought it was super engaging and sucked me in and all that stuff. So we'll see. It'll probably be a few more days until I'm like, yeah, teaching is good. I don't want to be a medical social worker, but for right now, I'm on a medical kick, and I thought this was a really good book. One thing I do want to say about this book, there is loads of eating animals and animal stuff. I personally was fine with it because I just skipped those parts. I skimmed. But if that's something you're sensitive to, this guy is just apparently really into like eating organs. Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to get started on my second day of spring break. I hope you guys are having an amazing weekend of reading, and I will talk to you soon. Bye!